So, dear learners, I welcome you all to this course on understanding human rights. Uh, we were discussing in our previous lectures about the regional instruments of human rights. And in the regional instruments of human rights, we emphasize that how this regional mechanism or regional arrangements to protect and promote human rights have played significant role in maintaining a human rights culture. We already discussed the European Convention on Human Rights, and we found that its robust implementation mechanism and the catalog of rights that it has included, its additional protocol that have been adapted from time to time, they have made it a dynamic document and the dynamic instrument of protecting human rights. After this European Convention on Human Rights, and especially we also highlighted the point that European Court of Human Rights especially is playing a very important role. And you see its judgments, its observations, its advisory opinion, all that is being cited everywhere in the world. And it's, in this way, European Court on Human Rights has contributed significantly to the protection of human rights, not only in Europe but in other parts of the world. Today, we are going to discuss the American Convention on Human Rights. After European Convention, the three regional mechanism of human rights we have to discuss. So today in this class, we are going to discuss the American Convention on Human Rights. And if you see the what are the points that we are going to highlight in this convention, first of all, introduction, then history of the American Convention on Human Rights, then key objectives, significance of the American Convention on Human Rights in promoting and protecting human rights in the Americas, then preamble and significant provisions, then implementation mechanism, and conclusion. The American Convention on Human Rights, which is also known as the Pact of San Jose, is an international treaty that was adopted in 1969 by member states of the Organization of American States, OAS, and came into force on 18 July 1978. So from 1969 to 1978, because the requisite number of signatories were needed. So you see that the European Convention that came in 1950, now you are seeing that it is coming in 1969. And it is being implemented or enforced in 1978. It serves as a regional human rights instrument establishing legal obligations and protections for individuals within the Americas. So, in the American continent, it is playing a very important role in protecting human rights. The convention stands at the cornerstone of human rights protection in the Americas. Building upon the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and inspired by the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights, the American Convention on Human Rights has played a crucial role in promoting and enforcing fundamental rights across the region. The convention covers a wide range of civil, political, economic, social, and cultural rights, aiming to ensure respect for human dignity and promote democratic principles throughout the region. So you'll find that in the convention, the first generation of human rights or the negative rights, as well as the second generation human rights, that is the positive rights, they have been enumerated or they have been listed. The American Convention on Human Rights is considered one of the most comprehensive human rights treaties in the world, incorporating both individual and collective rights. Again, significant feature. You'll find that not only person or an individual, but collective rights are also being emphasized here in this particular convention. The convention affirms the intention of state parties to consolidate within the framework of democratic institutions, again, democracy is being emphasized, a system of personal liberty and social justice based on respect for the essential rights of man and focuses mainly on civil and political human rights. So, the more emphasis on civil and political rights. In April 1948, history is important to understand. In April 1948, the OAS adopted both its charter and the American Declaration on the Rights and Duties of Man. So, when the OAS was created in 1948, you'll find that here it also, along with the this charter for the Organization of American States, it also adopted the American Declaration on the Rights and Duties of Man. You see, rights and duties both are being emphasized here. The declaration was the first international document listing universal human rights and proclaiming the need to protect these rights. It preceded the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. You see, it was adopted in April 1948, whereas the Universal Declaration of Human Rights was adopted in December 1948. So that is why, in this sense, it preceded the adoption of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. So, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which was declared to be the common standard of achievement for all nations and all peoples, here before that, you see that American continent had already adopted this particular, declaration. The American Declaration was unique in that, unlike the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, it included human rights that needed to be protected and individual duties to society. So you see a happy blending of rights and duties. While discussing the nature of human rights, we found that rights and duties go together. While discussing the non-Western and Western tradition of human rights, we found that the Western tradition is a rights-based tradition, whereas the non-Western tradition is what we call the duty-based tradition. But here we find that rights and duties both are being emphasized. So in that way, it is a striking a balance between rights and duties. The rights include civil and political rights, economic rights, and social rights, such as the right to property, culture, work, leisure, time, and social security. These are not only civil and political rights, but important economic rights are also being highlighted, social and economic rights. And in the parts of the duty, you'll find the duties include obligations to vote. It is the duty of the people to vote. See, voting in most of the countries, for example, in our country, if the voting is 60% or more than 60%, we feel very happy. And here, what is being emphasized, that it is the duty of the people to vote, obey the law, serve the community and the nation, pay taxes at work. So, this duty to vote should be understood, that it is rightly said that you wherever you are, you may not be interested in politics, but politics is interested in you. So that is why the people cannot say that we are apolitical. It means it becomes a duty to vote. Adoption of the convention reinforced many of the principles described in the American Declaration. So when the convention was adopted, what happened, that the rights that were there in the declaration, we have to understand the difference between American Declaration and American Convention. So in the declaration, the rights and duties of man, they were highlighted. Here what is happening, that it is becoming convention. So many of the rights that were there in the declaration, because declaration cannot have an implementation mechanism, but the convention will have implementation mechanism. So this is the reason that here what is happening, that it is being included, the rights that were there in the declaration. So adoption of the convention reinforced many of the principles described in the American Declaration. The convention focuses mainly on civil and political human rights and offers more detailed definitions of these rights than the declaration. The convention entered into force on July 18, 1978. Now, key objectives and principles of the convention. So, the objectives, number one, protect fundamental human rights. The American Convention on Human Rights aims to safeguard the civil, political, economic, social, and cultural rights of every individual within the jurisdiction of the member states. So, again, you see that ideological conflict you will not find here. The first and second generation rights as well as the collective rights, they have been included. And that become the objective of the convention, to promote and protect these rights. This broad scope reflects the specific needs and priorities of the American region. Again, promote democracy and the rule of law. The Convention seeks to strengthen democratic institutions and ensure the rule of law, creating a foundation for upholding human rights and preventing abuses. So, democracy, again, that is being emphasized. It means dictatorial regimes, authoritarian regimes, hereditary monarchies, they can be, they cannot have what is called a legally justifiable ground if you follow this convention. So that is one of the purpose. Then rule of law. Again, rule of law and democracy go together. So the democratic institutions are to be promoted and strengthened, and also the rule of law, creating a foundation for upholding human rights and preventing abuses. Combat discrimination and inequalities. The American Convention on Human Rights aims to eliminate all forms of discrimination and promote equality for all individuals, regardless of their race, gender, religion, social status, or other characteristics. That is integral part of all human rights instruments, whether regional or international, and it is being emphasized here also. Advance social justice. The convention seeks to promote social justice by addressing issues like poverty, lack of access to essential services, and unequal opportunities, contributing to a more just and equitable society. Again, important aim. Because in the civil and political rights, this kind of things you will not find, but here what is happening, that social justice is being emphasized, and that is why the issues like poverty, lack of access to essential services, and unequal opportunities, they are being addressed here, and it is coming in the form of right. So that is why this is significant. Foster regional cooperation and solidarity. The American Convention on Human Rights aims to promote dialogue and cooperation among member states on human rights issues, encouraging collective efforts to address regional challenges and share best practices. What are the principles? You see, many of the principles you will find here that we have already discussed in the nature of human rights in our, the first 2-3 lectures that we delivered on this course, that is understanding human rights, and you will find this is here also. So what are the important principles? For first of all, universality. All individuals within the jurisdiction of member states are entitled to the rights and freedoms enshrined in the American Convention on Human Rights, regardless of their nationality, ethnicity, gender, or other factors. It is very close to the principle of non-discrimination. Indivisibility and interdependence of rights. We discussed in the nature of human rights that all rights are interdependent, they are indivisible. So you'll find that indivisibility and interdependence of rights, all human rights, that is civil, political, economic, social, and cultural, are indivisible and interdependent. Respecting one type of right is essential for realizing others. So you will find that all rights are important. You cannot have, that priority can be given to one set of rights and the others can be ignored. So all rights are interdependent, and that is why they are indivisible. Progressive interpretation. The convention's provisions can be interpreted dynamically to adapt to evolving societal norms and circumstances, ensuring its continued relevance in addressing new challenges. So, a convention like this has to be dynamic, it has to be flexible, and it has to also have the principle of adaptability. So that has been emphasized here. State responsibility. The member states have the primary responsibility to respect, protect, and fulfill the human rights enshrined in the convention. For all the international treaties of human rights or international instruments of human rights, you will find that the states are held responsible. And that's why you have been emphasizing that the states are protector as well as violators of human rights. So this is the reason that here also all the states, they are responsible for implementing and respecting the rights that are mentioned in the, this convention. Individual petition right. Again, implementation mechanism, you see, that is a significant feature. Individuals can petition the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights if they believe their rights under the convention have been violated, empowering them to seek redress and hold their governments accountable. Enforcement mechanism. The American Convention on Human Rights is equipped with robust mechanism, including the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights, that is one, that is the first mechanism, and the Inter-American Court of Human Rights. Interesting, you see, both the agencies are there to implement and promote human rights, to protect human rights. And they are there to investigate violations, issue judgments, and supervise compliance, ensuring accountability and effective protection of rights. So you'll find a robust mechanism of implementation of human rights of the convention is there, and this mechanism includes two important organs, that is the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights and then the Inter-American Court of Human Rights. Now, the significance of the American Convention on Human Rights in promoting and protecting human rights in the Americas. The American Convention on Human Rights has played a vital role in advancing human rights in the Americas since its adoption in 1969. Here is a closer look at its significance. Landmark rulings and precedents. The individual petition right, the ability for individual to petition the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights and the Inter-American Court of Human Rights has led to numerous landmark rulings. The landmark judgments have been delivered. These rulings have addressed critical issues like freedom of expression, indigenous rights, women's rights, environmental protection, and LGBTQ plus rights. Significantly, you see, we have been talking about the rights of sexual minorities these days, that in the, you'll find in the spaces where human rights are being demanded, the sexual minorities are also emphasizing that they should be considered for providing rights. So here you'll find that landmark judgments and the rulings are there from the court, and because of that you'll find these rights have been emphasized. So it sets precedents and influence legal developments across the region. So because of that, you will find a human rights culture protecting rights of all the groups, that is developing because of this particular convention. Strengthening domestic legislation. The American Convention on Human Rights has influenced domestic human rights legislation and jurisprudence in many member states. Governments have incorporated provisions from the convention into their national laws, leading to a stronger legal framework for protecting individual rights. So it is not only the convention, that has the long list of rights, but you will find that it has influenced, motivated, inspired national governments of the region to include these human rights provisions in their domestic law. So because of that, what has happened, that a very strong legal framework in the domestic law is also available under the influence of this particular convention for people to claim their rights and to seek protection and promotion of those rights. Holding governments accountable. The American Convention on Human Rights provides a crucial mechanism for holding governments accountable for human rights violations. Judgments issued by the international, this Inter-American Court of Human Rights are binding on member states. That jurisdiction, if you see, all the member states are there, and this is binding on all the member states, requiring them to provide compensation to victims, adopt legislative or policy changes, and ensure non-repetition of violations. So, this is making the human rights mechanism a very strong mechanism in America because of this kind of provision that it has. Regional forum. The American Convention on Human Rights fosters dialogue and cooperation among member states on human rights issues. This creates a platform for sharing best practices, addressing regional challenges collectively, and holding each other accountable for upholding human rights standards. You see, the debates and deliberations, discussions they play a very important role in developing a human rights culture. So the constant dialogue is going on. The American Convention, it has thought, this kind of, so it becomes a regional forum where the member states are coming together. They are addressing the issue that, for example, global warming, climate change, these are the issues they are to be addressed collectively. So that is why it is providing a platform where, the member states can sit together and they can discuss how to mitigate the ill effects of global warming, climate change, and other issues where the collective efforts of all the nations are required. So, in this sense, this is very, very significant. Civil society engagement. The convention empowers civil society organizations to play a vital role in promoting and protecting human rights. They can submit complaints to the international, this Inter-American Court of Human Rights, advocate for legislative changes, and raise awareness about human rights violations. So, the NGOs, civil society organizations, they participate, and their role is vital in promoting human rights, because these NGOs, most of the time, the human rights organization, they don't take money from the government. They don't take any kind of donation from the some organizations, from the corporation or the corporate houses. So that is why that ensure their impartiality, independence, and freedom, and that is why they are critical of the governments if they are violating rights. So that is why the civil society engagement is very significant for promoting human rights, because you see the governmental agencies, the institutional mechanism that are created by the government or the national governments, they are not so effective. They also play important role, but they are not so effective, because most of the time you see the people, those who are appointed over there in those institutional mechanism, they try to protect the government. So they are not so critical of the government. On the other hand, you will find that the operating procedure of the NGOs or the human rights organization is very different. They are critical. Their annual reports or their report they bring from time to time, they criticize the government, they highlight the issues of violation of human rights, and by that way you will find they are playing significant role. So that's why this is an important feature where the civil society is engaged in promotion and protection of human rights. The regional solidarity. The American Convention on Human Rights promotes a sense of regional solidarity in the fight for human rights. This solidarity can help to overcome national challenges and pressure governments to adhere to their human rights obligations. So, regional solidarity, first of all, you see universalism versus cultural relativism, we have already highlighted. So, here, when regional solidarity, at least there is already a catalog of rights on which all the countries have agreed, all the countries of the region. So in this kind of circumstances you cannot say that these rights are culture specific, because this is reflecting the collective will of all the nations in the Americas. So ultimately this convention by that way is promoting human rights in that particular region, and at the same time it is promoting a sense of regional solidarity as well. Shifting cultural norms, beyond legal frameworks. So shifting cultural norms, the American Convention of Human Rights has contributed to shifting cultural norms and attitudes towards human rights in the Americas. Its emphasis on individual rights, equality, and non discrimination has challenged traditional power structures and fueled social movements demanding greater respect for human dignity. So, you see, there were many cultural norms that were restricting human rights, but now, under the influence of the ACHR, what has happened that shifting cultural norms and attitudes, they are more, the human rights are more acceptable, respectable, and a human rights culture has been developed because of this. So this is again an important feature. Raising awareness and education. The convention has played a role in raising awareness about human rights issues and promoting human rights education in the region. Uh, so dissemination of knowledge is one of the functions of this particular convention, and because of that, you will find that the people have got sensitized about human rights. This has empowered individuals to understand their rights, claim them, and hold their governments accountable. So, rights are claimed and reclaimed. because the governments all over, they try to violate or they try to restrict the freedom. So that is why a vigilant and aware citizenship is must. So here, what is happening that the rights are, since the human rights sensitization program, that is already implicit here. So through education, through dissemination of knowledge, through motivation, inspiration, what is happening that the people are able to understand and claim and reclaim their rights against their national government or against their states. Inspiring change. The American Convention on Human Rights success has served as an inspiration for other regional human rights instruments around the world, demonstrating the effectiveness of regional cooperation in advancing human rights. So it has, of course, become an example for many other regions, and the other regions are also being inspired by the success and the robust mechanism of human rights that this particular convention has developed. After this, having discussed all these features and the significance of the American Convention on Human Rights, now we are going to discuss the provisions that are there in the American Convention. So, it has, first of all, you see the American Convention of Human Rights consists of a preamble with 11 chapters and 82 articles. So, there is a preamble and then 82 articles. Of course, all the articles we are not going to discuss here because it will take a lot of time. But the learner should at least read once, all the articles so that you can understand the spirit of the convention. So, first of all, you see the preamble. The American states, signatory to the present convention, reaffirming their intention to consolidate in this hemisphere within the framework of democratic institutions a system of personal liberty and social justice based on respect for the essential rights of man. You see, when personal liberty, it is satisfying the aspiration of Western liberal notion of human rights, that is being emphasized, and social justice, most important, the socialist movements, and in the global south also, it has been discussed. So here what is happening that the social justice and liberty that is being already mentioned, personal liberty and social justice. Recognizing that the essential rights of man are not derived from being a national of a certain state, but are based upon attributes of the human personality, and that they therefore justify international protection in the form of a convention reinforcing or complementing the protection provided by the domestic law of the American states. Considering that these principles have been set forth in the Charter of the Organization of American States, OAS, in the American Declaration of the Rights of Duties of Man, that is also, we have already discussed about American Declaration of the Rights of and Duties of Man when we are discussing the evolution of the concept of human rights. It is being cited here. And in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, I already discussed with you that the Universal Declaration of Human Rights is the most cited instrument of human rights. So here you will find in this convention also UDHR is being cited, and that they have been reaffirmed and refined in other international instruments worldwide as well as regional in scope. You see, so the American Declaration of the Rights and Duties of Man, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, you see the continuity is being emphasized. That is important. It creates greater acceptability for the rights that are enshrined in the convention. Reiterating that in accordance with the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, again that UDHR is being cited, the ideal of free men enjoying freedom from fear and want can be achieved only if conditions are created whereby everyone may enjoy his economic, social and cultural rights as well as his civil and political rights. So you see that economic, social and cultural rights, they create conducive condition for the enjoyment of civil and political rights. That is being emphasized here. So it is not only civil and political rights, but you will find the economic, social and cultural rights. And the enjoyment of economic, social and cultural rights are becoming a kind of, you can interpret as a necessary condition for the enjoyment of civil and political rights, the negative rights. So the positive rights and the negative rights, they have been emphasized in the preamble itself, and they go together. So that's why the indivisibility of human rights, that is being emphasized through this convention, that you can notice here. Considering that the third Special Inter-American Conference, Buenos Aires, 1967, approved the incorporation into the charter of the organization itself or of broader standards with respect to economic, social, and educational rights, and resolved that an Inter-American Convention on Human Rights should determine the structure, competence, and procedure of the organs responsible for these matters. This is the preamble. So in this way, you will find that the preamble itself is citing Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and you see the American Declaration of Rights and Duties of Man, that is being cited, and what is being proclaimed, that social, economic, and cultural rights are necessary for the enjoyment of civil and political rights. So in this way, you will find that to the two ideological blocks that were there during the Cold War, their aspirations can be satisfied, because it's an organization where many member states are there. So that's why with different kind of ideological moorings. So you can say this is one of the best examples where the different ideological moorings can be accommodated into one convention. So it is not Western liberal democratic values are being emphasized, but you will find that the socialist ethic that emphasizes socio-economic and cultural rights, that is also being incorporated into it. So by that way, we can say this is a document that is the best example of consensus building through dialogue, negotiation, and discussion. After this, we are going to discuss the significant provisions, and for that, you have to wait for the next lecture. In the next lecture, we are going to have discussion on the significant provisions, implementation mechanism, and all. So we are going to include our lecture, right now with this preamble and other discussion that we have already made on the American Convention of Human Rights. The important provisions we are going to discuss in our next lecture. So thank you very much.